All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're jumping into a really fascinating and, let's be honest, pretty complex topic. One that sits right at the crossroads of faith, math, and history.
So, you've probably heard about the Quran's linguistic beauty, right? It's been revered for over 1,400 years. But what if there's something else? Something hidden just beneath the surface? Some researchers are now claiming there's a super sophisticated mathematical structure, almost like a divine signature, encoded right into the text itself. The big question is, could there really be a hidden blueprint?
Okay, so what are we really talking about here? Well, this whole field of study has a name, ijaz ilmi, and the basic idea is this. It suggests the Quran contains knowledge, specifically scientific or mathematical patterns that was just impossible for anyone to know back in 7th century Arabia, which, if true, would point to a source beyond human capability.
Now, this idea of finding meaning in numbers, it's not new at all. I mean, it's ancient. Think about it. The Babylonians were using the number 7 symbolically in their myths. The ancient Greeks revered numbers like 3. You've got the super intricate gematria codes in the Hebrew Torah. So cultures have always believed that numbers could hold some kind of deeper, even mystical meaning. The Quran then was revealed in a world that was already attuned to the power of numbers.
Okay, but before we go hunting for a hidden code, we kind of need to understand the building it's supposed to be in, right? So, to really get a handle on these numerical patterns, we've got to start with the basics, the foundational structure of the Quran itself.
All right, so the Quran is made up of 114 chapters, or surahs. But here's the key thing you need to know. They're not laid out chronologically, not like a history book at all. It's much more like an interconnected web, a nonlinear tapestry of different themes and stories.
And at the very center of that web, holding it all together, is one single, powerful concept, Tawheed. This is the absolute core principle, the oneness and sovereignty of God. The idea is that every single story, every law, every verse, it all points back to this one central truth.
What's really interesting is that the Quran actually talks about one of its own teaching methods, calling it mathani. This basically means purposeful repetition. You'll see key stories and themes pop up again and again in different contexts, and the goal is to really drill in those core ideas. And this is where it gets interesting for our topic. Proponents of this numerical theory believe that this repetition isn't just about words. It extends right into the mathematics of the text itself.
Okay, so that's the foundation, the theory behind it all. But how does this actually work? What are people finding? Researchers identify what they call pala, or patterns. Let's dive in and look at a few of the key examples they always bring up.
Let's start with the big one, the most fundamental number in the Quran's whole structure, 114. That's the total number of chapters.
Now, this number 114 immediately leads us to a really key division in the text. See, those 114 chapters are actually split into two very different groups. You have 85 chapters that have pretty standard openings, but then you have these 29 chapters that start with these mysterious disconnected letters. They're called the muqatat. Honestly, their exact meaning has been debated for centuries, but for the people looking for numerical patterns, these 29 chapters are a huge clue, a major starting point.
So what do researchers do with the number 114? Well, they apply some pretty simple math to it. Let's take the digits 1, 1, and 4. If you multiply them, 1 times 4, you get 4. Okay? Now if you add them, 1 plus 1 plus 4, you get 6.
Simple enough, right? But here's where the theory really starts to click into place for its supporters. They argue this isn't just a random coincidence. They claim those results, 4 and 6, are actually intentional pointers. They say they map directly to the 4th and 6th chapters of the Quran. And guess what? Those specific chapters are well known for their deep dive into core themes like social justice and, you guessed it, Tawheed.
Okay, let's try this same kind of thinking on another number we just talked about, 29. Remember? That's the number of chapters that start with those mysterious letters, the muqatta'at.
Now this next one is a little more complex. It's called the quadratic echo. So you take the digits of 29, that's a 2 and a 9. You square them both. So 2 squared is 4, and 9 squared is 81. Now add those two results together. 4 plus 81 is 85. And get this, 85 is the exact chapter number of another really significant chapter, Surah al-Buruj, which talks all about constellations and cosmology. So they argue you have a direct mathematical link between the count of one special group of chapters and the specific number of another.
All right, for our last example, let's look at a number that's already famous, a real celebrity in the math world, 1729. You might know it as the Hardy Ramanujan number.
And what makes this number so special? Well, check this out. It's the smallest possible number that you can write as the sum of two cubes in two completely different ways. You can see it right there. 1 cubed plus 12 cubed is 1729. But also, 9 cubed plus 10 cubed is also 1729. Pretty neat, huh?
So what on earth does that have to do with the Quran? Well, the people who research these patterns see a powerful symbol here. They look at this mathematical property, two totally different paths converging on one single unified number, and they see it as a perfect metaphor for Tawheed. The idea that all these diverse stories and signs in the Quran are all converging to prove one single truth, the unity of God.
Okay, so after all that, what are we supposed to make of it? Are these patterns a genuine miracle? A fascinating mathematical coincidence? Or is it all just a product of the human mind? As you can imagine, these findings have kicked off a pretty significant debate.
So you've basically got two main camps here. On one side, you have the divine design argument. This view says, look, these patterns are just too intricate, too interconnected to be an accident. They see it as a deliberate signature, proof of an intelligence that was way beyond human ability in the 7th century. But then, on the other side, you have the argument from apophenia and coincidence. Now, apophenia is just a fancy word for our brain's tendency to see patterns in random data. Skeptics say, hey, the human brain is a pattern-finding machine. Given a huge text like the Quran, you're bound to find patterns if you look hard enough. They argue it's a classic case of cherry-picking the calculations that work and just ignoring all the ones that don't.
And it's really important to get that the methods being used here are not just simple math. It's a whole interdisciplinary approach. I mean, they're using numerical analysis, of course, checking sums and ratios, but they're also doing deep textual analysis, counting words, and even using old systems like abjad, where letters have number values. Some researchers even bring in astronomical analysis, trying to correlate numbers to things like celestial cycles. And then all of that gets weighed against historical comparison, what could people have known back then, and the theological context from traditional scholarship. It's a really multi-layered way of looking at it.
And for the people who are deep into this research, the couple of examples we've just walked through, that's just scratching the surface. As one of the sources for this explainer puts it, that's just a small part of the Quran's pattern. The implication is that there's this massive, even more intricate design just waiting to be fully uncovered.
And that really brings us to the final, huge question, doesn't it? Do these patterns point to some kind of grand, supernatural design, a blueprint hidden inside an ancient text for all these centuries? Or do they reveal something just as profound, but about us, about the human mind itself, our relentless, innate, and maybe even beautiful quest to find order and meaning in the universe that surrounds us?